Traffic and Safety Committee meeting. That's the protocol. That's how we
There you go.
have to do
Keep
it.
that in mind.
So, Alex, afternoon. Why don't we start with the agenda? You want to talk about the agenda, and then we'll invite public for non-agenda items?
Sure. We'll have, I think there's one person here that's not on the agenda. We have a new neighborhood traffic calming program, and Neil wanted to look at what happens if we remove traffic calming measures.
Good.
We have the 2018 crash summary report, and we have project updates that I want to report on, some progress that we're making, and then we have some current requests in process, and then there's the Rock Creek Parkway design discussion that was added from the town board meeting. So we can start with item 2.
Yeah, let's just, on the agenda, because in case people are wondering, when's our next meeting? We're doing every other month, correct?
Well, it'll be in August.
And then when are you scheduled to do the traffic study around the temporary speed bumps?
In Pitkin,
Yeah.
we've started collecting data.
Okay,
already.
good.
Yeah.
So we could tell people that we'll look at that data before the next meeting?
We can do it in August unless you want to wait for school to be back in session, so.
I think let's look at it in August. Let's look at some data in August and then see if the data don't tell us anything, then we could wait. If the data are compelling, then, but let's put it on the agenda, please, for August.
Well, the one question I have is what's our baseline for that data? Is it when school was in session?
I think it was.
If school was in session for our baseline, I'd prefer that we wait until school is in session again to get the update.
To do October.
Yeah.
All right, well, can we do it twice?
I'm fine with twice.
Just do an update on the speed data. Let's do an update on the speed data on the next agenda.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Okay, items from the public?
I'm Jenna Bourgeois. I'm a journalist and the owner of Sizzling Heat News. And my company and myself are residents of Louisville. As many of you have seen videos on YouTube and in the news lately when it comes to police encounters, it would not be unusual for people to be nervous about those encounters because of what we've seen happen. I had the unfortunate experience of encountering the Sheriff's Department over the weekend. And what I discovered was during that encounter, in fact, there was 2 encounters, both 15 minutes apart, that there seemed to be a severe lack of information on behalf of the Sheriff's Department about the ordinances for the town of Superior. And I believe that the discussion and the end result of our encounter demonstrated that. And I have evidence both on videotape and on the body cameras of the officers that I think everybody, after viewing those videotapes, would agree, because at least one of the officers admitted that he did not know the ordinances of the town. But he did explain that the county was contracted by the town to do the law enforcement. So I felt compelled to bring this to your attention so that you were aware of that situation, because the worst thing that you can have is an encounter with the police where you as the citizen think you know what the ordinance is and then have them try to tell you a different ordinance. And you can see the kind of conflict that would happen during that encounter. I don't know how you want to proceed. I don't want to get into details in an open public meeting about the specific individuals. I don't think that would be appropriate. And my perspective is not to be confrontational about it, but rather to solve the knowledge gap that I observed, and to help you, better govern that contract that you have with the Sheriff's Department.
Well, I'm sorry that happened to you. Thank you for telling us. I'm not sure this is the right forum. I do have a couple thoughts, however. I would certainly suggest you, I don't know if there's a public way, a official way you could talk to the Boulder County Sheriff's Department, but we're lucky we have Sheriff Chamberlain here, so
yeah.
I certainly feel free to chat with them. I will tell you, I have a teenager who's about to drive, and so my advice, and I get on a personal level, I've been pulled over a handful of times, and I don't like it. I get super, it just makes me crazy and anxious. And in my experience, I have been very honest to say, hey, I'm super nervous, and I don't know why I'm nervous right now, so I just need, if I look like I'm super nervous, just be aware. I'll probably be okay in a couple minutes. But in the 3 or 4 times I've been pulled over, I've said that 3 or 4 times, and the police have appreciated the fact that I've been transparent with them. And yeah, on I think all occasions I got speeding tickets or whatever I got. So, but we're all human, right? And so just recognize that the patrolman or woman, that the patrol person that pulled you over that had this incident, they're also human. And if they're not familiar with what the protocol was or what's in the town code, it's a training opportunity. And for all the bad events that occasionally happen when things like that happen, I'm glad to see you here tonight, and let's use this as maybe a coaching opportunity and a learning opportunity.
That's how I view it, yeah.
Good.
It didn't result in any citation or any arrest or anything of that nature, and it's because of the fact that I wasn't violating any ordinance. And that's why I found it frustrating, because of that situation. But I agree with you, and that's why I did come here to try to solve that through training.
Good. Well, thank you. Anything else? Public comment? Nope. Great. Next, neighborhood traffic program update.
Okay. Carlos?
Okay. Good evening. So what you have in front of you tonight, and is also in the packet, is an update of what we were calling our neighborhood traffic calming program checklist. At the February meeting, we brought this to you, and I had put some information in there that showed areas that could be improved, or some additional robust data collection measures and so forth. At that meeting in February discussed pulling that out and just giving us a version of what's current. And then all of the new things that could occur could be added and spoke to later in the process or the year or with council, town board. But what you wanted was a final version that just included current. So Alex and I have worked on that. What you have in front of you tonight is in fact that, and we'd like to get it finalized because we've had requests since February. We're still handing out the old 2-pager, 3-pager. So this is before you tonight with the edits.
Okay.
The other thing probably worth mentioning is if you, Alex, can you scroll to the bottom? We did add here that's part of your current document was the program objectives and then the tools. The tools is quite a kind of run-on sentence list there, but it's intended to all be on one page. But we did add both of those as a result of the last conversation we had. So everything you see in there is currently in the 2 or 3-page document you've been handing out for years. This is just organizes into one area.
Has anybody actually used this yet?
The checklist?
Yeah.
No, but we've been handing out the
But I mean, has anybody come with 5 signatures on an affected street? Has anybody followed the process?
We've, in the last 6 months, sent the guidelines to 3 groups. They have not returned. I know one was collecting signatures.
Okay.
So
We have someone in the audience who's done this.
Okay. Oh,
We in terms of actually collecting signatures on a formal piece of paper, no. By saying, hey, we have 5 people in our neighborhood who are interested and want to proceed, yes. So there's a gray area. We kind of considered that valid as yes. There have been 5 people that demonstrated interest in doing something. After tonight, if this is how we want to proceed, then we will pass this out and ask for either 5 email signatures back or 5 written signatures back. So I believe it's 76th is the first neighborhood that would theoretically have, they're working their way through this process.
okay. And I'm glad we did this, but I mean, it just as I learn more, even as you think about the data collection, I know we're not going to change the code tonight, but for example, Alex, and I said this the other night, Alex has convinced me, because I want to see if you guys agree, that the 85th percentile, people will drive to the 85th percentile. And it almost doesn't matter what the speed limit is.
Well, so I would disagree with that based on the Coal Creek data we got today. I mean, I did my own, and I apologize, guys, because I got an engineering degree, which just is always itching to crunch data. I mean, the speed limit on Coal Creek is 35, and the median and the mean were 26.
But the 85th percentile is,
The 85th percentile, because we have a
35.
very wide standard deviation of 7.5.
Right.
And that's the reason why when you look at percentiles, yeah, you have these outliers that just rocket down the street, and that's pulling up that percentile, whereas the majority of drivers are actually adhering to something 10 miles below the speed limit. You know, so, I mean, I don't disagree that percentiles are important, but they can't be the only.
I'm not suggesting it's the only, but that's what, but as a, from a road design
Yeah,
perspective,
yeah.
It's an important number, but I don't love the fact, in this that says, our own code says staff will collect data, and it doesn't say, it says above 5 miles per hour will be noted, and what it implies is if it's more than 5 miles an hour or over, then something needs to be done. But in my view, I don't think, if the 85th percentile was 29 miles per hour, I think if on a street that has posted limit of 25 miles an hour and maybe turns and cars parked there and a lot of kids on that street, I just don't think it's safe. I still think we should do something about it.
I think the way it's worded, to me, I just read that as the report will call out what is the
Right,
85th
will be noted.
percentile
Yeah.
and what percent of people are above 5. And I'm fine with that because we can take that data and still say,
Right.
we don't like it, we want to move forward.
Yeah, I like what Laura said because, staff did that with the memo today, for today. But when we
Right.
looked at the raw data is where, I mean, we have to have the raw data to kind of, tease out what is actually happening. And, when it comes to traffic volume, I think the new tools that you guys have has collected a phenomenal amount of data without people knowing that it was there. The absence of the air hoses means that this is, unbiased, well, as much as it can be unbiased data. I did see the boxes, so I knew they're there, but I think most people didn't know that they were there. And I think, extending it, far beyond, I think we used to do 2 days, and I think what you gave us was 10. So we had, hot sunny days in April and cold snowy days in April, and I think that gave us a real good perspective. So I don't know that we need to define staff will collect data, volume data, like how long that should be, maybe at least a week, just to kind of normalize it for, late start, early release, weekends, snowy weather. But I think, from the perspective of guidelines, I think this gives us the degrees of freedom, kind of take, to work with staff on getting the data and then work with you guys on how we're going to interpret and move forward with that data.
I would add that you'll see some information coming up. I'm actually plotting all of the data that we have now so that you can see the 85th percentile, but I actually have this one that we're working on for Rock Creek Circle right now. We're actually plotting all of the counts we have so you can see, it's almost like an echocardiogram so that you also can look at not only the 85th percentile, but you can see the variation.
It's a
that occurs.
bimodal mean. I mean, there's some folks
Exactly.
that are definitely, staying well below,
Yes.
and there's this group of folks that just exceed the speed limit, wherever they are.
And time of day matters also,
Absolutely. Yeah,
right?
there's a 70 mile an hour at midnight
Yes.
for 10 p.m. driver on Coal Creek. So
So we're hearing you big time. We want to show you where the 85th is, but our job moving ahead is to show you more slices of the data. And so when you see Rock Creek, you're going to see more of that.
So this is how the existing policy is worded. Traffic calming measures will only be applied in areas where the 85th percentile exceeds the posted speed limit by more than 5 miles an hour. So we said, no, I don't think we want to put that on a checklist because I don't think that's what we're hearing the committee saying, so.
Correct.
And again, it's over 5, where traffic exceeds 500 vehicles per day.
Yeah.
I guess, so is this document, this is the one that was approved back in 2006, so we can't modify, right? I mean, my preference on this would be traffic calming measures should only be considered rather than will, just to give the committee a little bit more latitude, but if this is what's in there since
So,
2006.
right, so we wanted to give you latitude, we'll note that.
Yep.
We'll give you the data.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you could also, I'm fine, traffic calming will be applied and where the volume, or upon the direction of TSC and town board. you
Yes.
know. I mean,
Yes.
there's a number of different ways you can get it. I just don't want to, this does, if somebody really wants to deploy, I mean, we could, the code says what it says, but we shouldn't do things
Yeah,
that completely deviate from the code.
right, absolutely.
And in fact, we have deployed traffic calming measures,
Where we shouldn't have.
right, where we shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Alex, you can go back to the chart. The other kind of process piece that we spoke of last time that's worth reflecting on is just we have this kind of 5 steps and kind of organize everything that's in there into these steps, right? And there are various projects you have, some of which we'll talk to tonight, are in different steps of this process, right? And so now this is another way for people who have already have an ongoing process to understand where they go next. So not only sending this out to people who request, say, hey, I have 4 neighbors and I want to get on this, like when we go to Rock Creek Circle or Torrey's, we can say, here's where you are in the process, so they understand what happens.
Yeah, I think that's it, or go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I completely agree with that, and that was going to be my one piece of feedback is on the TSC page, the web page that is, can we add like a little bit of a tracker where it says which projects are in step 1, which are in step 2, et cetera? I think that would be great if, for the board, people have something to refer to. If it's somebody who's not on TSC, if they email Clint or Mark, that they can at least point to that page and say, yeah, it looks like it's in step 3 right now.
I think
And I
Laura's
think
reading
that'll
my
help
notes, too.
reduce emails.
Yeah,
Sorry.
read my notes, because I mean, that's exactly the same thing, because we rolled that out with the development applications.
Yep.
I think it's fantastic for people to know, Pitkin's in the data gathering, Castle Peak is in the deployment, Waldona's in the, well, Waldona's what it is.
Well, let's not, I agree with you guys, but on project, if somebody wants to call Alex and get the checklist, that's step 1.
Yeah.
I don't think that should be there. With the exception, I agree with everything you guys said, with the exception of step 1, we wouldn't report. Somebody's noodling over whether or not
Oh,
they
yeah.
want to do it.
Yeah,
Yes.
only after you've crossed
Right.
you've completed step.
Well, okay,
one.
good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not just every call.
Alex, we could do something like that?
Yes.
Great.
We'll list all the current requests and where they are in the process and refer to these steps.
That's great, yeah.
And finally, just want to say, I really like the addition of the traffic calming tools in the bottom right. I think that's a great resource for residents to see what the options are and start to consider those.
We did struggle with these 2 items about the decision-making process and whether the 65% approval, which is, do we get everybody on the block to agree? But we also wanted to put in the best interest of the town. We kind of added that. So TSC kind of makes a recommendation, then it goes to the full board. It's unclear what happens if TSC doesn't recommend it to the board. Does it stop here?
Or I guess where I was a little confused is, let's say, the TSC determines that we have to implement some sort of safety mechanism and the neighborhood doesn't want it. I mean, I think personally, I'm not going to adhere to public opinion when it comes to safety, So, I think we just got to be careful.
Right, and you may have something that's requested, the neighborhood's all set, but you may think, well, there's some safety issues with what they're proposing.
Right, absolutely.
Right. So we wanted to give you an out, just that, that you just don't take anything that a neighborhood proposes. And then, of course, there's a budgetary.
True.
Town board has to decide whether funds are available.
I'm wondering if we just want to shorten it to if the TSC determines this is in the best interest of the town.
Well, then what's the point of doing the survey? I like the 60.
To me, I think the survey would help me decide whether it's in the best interest of the town. But to Neil's point, if residents don't want it, I want the TSC to still be able to say, we've heard that 51% of residents don't want it and 49% do.
Right. At the risk of offending Kendra, Mark, and every other lawyer, you could get it with an and or too.
Yeah, and/or would be fine.
I think that's right.
Can you restate that sentence?
If the TSC determines the project has 65% approval from survey responses and/or is in the best interest of the town. I think that covers it.
Nothing.
quite like the hyphen. Thank you.
Okay?
I think this is cool.
I think it's great.
I'm going to try it.
All right, let's
I got a
let's
little-
try it. Let's get it on the
I got a little
website.
nit. I'm going to
Move
experiment.
forward.
Pet project.
Okay, so,
Of course. That would be helpful to speak there.
Just so the mic picks it up.
So if you don't approve, but the survey said, 80% of the neighborhood wanted something, is there any sort of a next step there so that the town feels heard or the neighborhood feels heard?
So, yes, it's a good question, I think. There's a couple things you could do. You could always speak in public comment on any town board meeting, right? The board meetings are, of course, a little bit more formal. So here, anybody can come anytime, and we're fine. This is more conversational. But in the town board meeting, there is a period allotted for public comment. The board, as a rule, doesn't usually respond to that public comment at the time, but they will definitely listen, and we have a practice of hearing the public comment. So if the TSC ignored it, then frankly, I don't see that happening. We wouldn't be doing our job. The other thing you could do is you could ask any board member, we have a policy that any two board members that want something agended on an agenda can make a determination that something should be on the agenda. So if you feel like the three of us are using this inappropriately and not putting something up for town board review, then you could talk to Clint, Sandy, anybody else and say, hey, the TSC is ignoring me. I don't know what to do. Can you please put this on your town board agenda? And they will.
Okay.
And it will be agended. So,
Okay.
so
I think that's sort of an important thing for people to know, that
Right.
there would be a reconsideration
Yeah.
with different steps too,
Yeah.
if you
Right.
can fit it
Right.
into the paragraph.
fair.
Call it the appeal process.
Right.
Probably a clarification on that. When it says town board review, it would mean that the town board wouldn't review the project to proceed, but I presume that one of the three of you would bring it up at a meeting, at a TSC update to say, hey, we've been working on X project. We went through the 5-step program. However, we determined the project A didn't meet safety objectives, B probably wasn't fundable yet, or state reasons. And so at least at a town board meeting, if the project wasn't proceeding, I presume you give regular updates about TSC at those meetings.
Correct.
So the language in there is to imply that it wouldn't proceed with design, but it would, theoretically, you would be talking about it as your regular reporting, which at that point, us on council would have to say, hold on a second, I'm getting a lot of feedback about this. Can you give me more details of why it didn't proceed?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. At the beginning of each town board meeting, we give reports on committees we've attended, so that would be the appropriate place to bring it up. And I think particularly if something were contentious like that, I certainly would not personally want to sweep it under the rug that, hey, we denied this even though 90% of citizens wanted it.
Right.
So I think that would help.
Yeah.
okay, item B here, 3B, what happens if there's traffic calming measures that the neighborhood doesn't like and want removed? And we have an example right now of, on Montona, I think we have 5 or 8 requests to remove the stop signs, 2 stop signs at the T intersections. So what is the process now that you would follow in getting those removed?
Yeah, so I asked for this to be up there because quite honestly, I want to make sure we have a process so that, if 10 people from the neighborhood say, let's get rid of all our stop signs,
Right.
we've got, and Waldona is what it is. It's maybe the tip of the iceberg, I don't know. That if a group of residents want to remove some calming, measures that we have, that we can at least go through a similar process to make sure that we're doing this deliberately. Because, I think anybody could walk down Waldona and say, let's take out this speed bump and that stop sign, but, I'd like to understand the repercussions as well.
So I would propose we follow the same process.
But it's a little clunky. You're not getting speed data. But
Yeah.
So the one thing that presents itself here is, I talked about stop signs and signals have a warrant process, whether they're required or not, and that's a data-driven decision. And so one thing that this checklist allows you to do is staff-initiated projects. And one of them is to do a warrant study on those stop signs to see if they're still warranted. My gut tells me they're probably no longer
I think
warranted.
if you go back to the 1996 board meeting, they weren't warranted when they got installed.
Fair enough. So understanding that, but updating a very small piece of the data just to say, we did the warrant study, they're no longer warranted, would be a method for removing the ones on Waldona. Of course, the side street stops will still have them as you approach Waldona, right? But we're talking about the through on Waldona. So this one feels like a technical warrant conversation that would be staff initiated as part of a project would be the procedure. And then likely the data would suggest they aren't warranted, which would then lead to us coming back and probably the August meeting saying we did the study. We should probably wait till school's on just to be valid, but theoretically they wouldn't be warranted. And then they could be removed.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we talked about it a meeting or two ago, it was, should we do it? There was such a near exclusive focus on Waldona. So we've got a backlog of things. Now we've cleared out some of that backlog. I'm fine with having that conversation again. And obviously, that's now, that's become a neighborhood that clearly people that live in that neighborhood, their voice is the important voice. There is nobody that's cutting through. So.
So we'll do the warrants, we'll have to wait till the school starts to do an accurate warrant study.
Sure.
And so we'll wait till school starts to get that, and then, so that'll probably be part of an agenda later this fall. Okay, because you have to get counts there in order to get the right warrants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess from going back to item number A, when we put this on the website, we can argue that the Waldona traffic calming measure removal would already be in a step 2, right? Just so that if anybody
Yep.
is wanting to know where we're at, we're starting the process,
Yes.
and obviously we're going to wait till school starts.
One thing I would like us to consider, though, is whether we want to remove the stop signs or the speed humps. I think both should be considered, or both, but I think staff should be looking at either or both.
Yeah, there is one speed bump that's in front of 3 homes, right at the, where 88 used to be. So, yeah, absolutely. Good question to ask.
All right, we'll put it in step 2. We'll collect data, we'll collect costs too, because removing a stop sign is pretty low
Right.
I'll
cost.
take the wrench. I can take the
Removing
stop sign
a
down.
speed hump is,
Yeah.
Understood. Just want to make sure we do consider it.
Thank you. Yeah, you're right.
And then there are, I don't want to say exceptions, but I like the process, and I know you particularly like process.
I do.
I just want to make sure that we're not, so if somebody, like I observed, and I forget even where it was, I should have written it down, there was a crosswalk that desperately needs to be painted, really hard to see. This is not, we shouldn't go through the warrant process for somebody to send an email or click it, fix it and click it, or click it and fix it, or whatever, at Town of Superior for things like that. I mean, easy fixes that people notice aren't going through this type of process.
Well, to me, I mean, any fix is, we already have the crosswalk there, we just need it repainted, or there was a stop sign there and it got blown down, that definitely wouldn't go through this.
Right.
I just look at this as more, hey, we want to do something totally different than what we have there before.
Although I like your line of questions, Kevin, because one of the things I brought up at last week's board meeting was the stop lines in front of the pedestrian crossings. As I drive around Louisville, and it seems like I do a lot of that, there's some stop lines, 10 or 15 feet in front of the pedestrian crossings. We don't have any of those here. So often I think cars get right up to the pedestrian, crossing. And do we need a true, deep dive analysis, or can we just stripe, some of these crossings with, a stop line?
I think there's a couple things that we need to do some research. I think the mid-block ones are probably where you have a yield situation and the triangles for the yield. We have a lot of flashing beacons at 4-way intersections. So if you put a stop bar over there, normally you don't put the stop bar when you have a 4-way stop or you have a traffic signal situation. Sure. So you want to stop before the crosswalk. So not everybody is stopping there. So
Is there a particular example of which, is it the one on,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think is because we were talking about the Coal Creek, Rock Creek intersection, sort of the eastbound side of Rock Creek, so you're going downhill, and because you're going downhill, a lot of folks see the pedestrian at the last minute, they brake pretty late, so they're really close to that side of the crossing intersection.
Right.
If there's like a 5-foot buffer, I think it just gives pedestrians, just
a little more.
a little more.
there's no stop light there now?
No, there's a flashing beacon.
Right.
So, yeah. I personally, I don't know. I'm just trying to give,
But I think it'd be, like where we put it in near Safeway, the pedestrian crossing
Yeah.
there, that's mid-block.
Yeah.
And that would be probably appropriate for the
sure, and
yield.
that's what I saw in Via Appia, in front of the rec center. Like, they've got that pedestrian crossing, and they've got some big striped white lines that, say, stop here.
There's yield here, I think.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, but anyways, it's really a macro question around, things like that are potential enhancements to things that we already have, that are within degrees of freedom that we have. Do they have to come through here?
Yeah. And I think I would make a distinction, I guess, between traffic calming and pedestrian protection. And whenever there's a crosswalk, I get requests all the time for crosswalks.
Sure.
And, normally, I'll implement those without consulting the committee. Sometimes there's budget impacts because they want a crossing to, where there's no ADA ramp. So there's one ADA ramp and you cross into another area that doesn't have an ADA ramp. So now I have to put an ADA ramp in. So there's little budget impacts. But if it's just on a school route or near a bus stop, normally staff will take care of those types of issues. But pedestrian protection, we have one tonight that we're going to talk about on Colton that you brought up, that may not need to go through the neighborhood process because it's not in front of anybody's house.
Right.
It's
But I
not.
also don't love the whole, I feel like we have somebody, so I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I just heard there's another sign that says yield here.
Yes.
I feel like we have more signs
Yeah.
per capita, and so, I mean, I want to give, so I'm totally torn by that. It's pedestrian safety.
Yeah.
It's not have too much process. Of course, Alex should make that right decision, and if he wants to throw up a line in front of a crosswalk, like,
Not another sign.
I don't want to, like, you're the expert, what do I know? At the same time, if I see one more sign in town,
Yeah. It's,
we have more I'm going to argue that we have more signs per capita than any town in America.
Well, let me do some research on that whole issue of yield.
Any suburban town in northern Colorado.
There you go. I
I'm
take
gonna-
that bet.
Right,
Let Carlos
take
do
that
it.
back.
Yeah, right. He's going to make me calculate this now, so yeah, okay.
Well, and I think my question with all of this, and I think, Neil, I think you were the one who pointed out with people aren't obeying the speed limits, and we need more traffic calming. I just would really question, can we get similar benefits by not putting in traffic calming measures, but being more stringent on enforcement? And Sergeant Chamberlain, maybe that's a question for you, but I'm wondering if we got a reputation as being a town that tickets people going over the speed limit, would people learn to slow down in our town?
2 words, photo radar. I mean, Cherry Creek uses a lot, so I don't disagree.
I know that there are spots in Cherry Creek where I know there is a camera.
But do you slow down when you get near them?
I do, absolutely.
They are very effective.
Right,
And
but,
then you race away from them.
right, but
I'm not saying that.
so, I want to be careful we don't go too far off agenda here, I
Yeah.
suppose, but 2 thoughts. Number one, we contract with Boulder County Sheriff. Boulder County Sheriff is on record saying they're not supportive of, not that they're not, we can do whatever we want to do,
Right.
but I want to be respectful and supplement what Boulder County Sheriff is doing and not go against them. We contract with them, they're the experts, and they have problems. We need to consider that data point. Number 2, I'm now convinced that, there are people, if you made the speed limit 20 miles an hour, I'll drive 21 miles an hour. I'll obey it. I'm a nerd. That's what I'll do. And I think you guys will probably do the same. But without redesigning the streets, we're not going to get people to slow down. Without the traffic calming is a shortcut to redesigning the street.
So I can say that, this year we increased our budget for extra traffic enforcement. We've more than doubled the amount of tickets we've written over the last year. But many people can attest, Detective McKim was a traffic car down here for a year, How many times did you write the same person more than once? So, and we can keep writing tickets, that doesn't necessarily change behavior. So we're doing what we can. You know, some of it's on society itself. We can't be held responsible for all of their actions. We can do what we can, but sometimes the citizens have to take responsibility for their own actions, because it's all the time we go to community meetings where the biggest complaint is traffic. And we will go hit an area hard, and we will write tickets, and we will write the residents, and they'll be like, we're not the ones we were complaining about.
It's all the people outside of town.
Yeah, but it's still, they're getting the tickets, so everybody has to take part in helping out, so.
Okay, thank you.
And am I, the photo radar?
So the sheriff doesn't really like photo radar, and photo radar isn't self-sustaining. It costs more than you make. You know, it's not a self-sustaining program. You know, and the sheriff's view, and I agree with it, if you're going to give someone a ticket, do it in person.
Okay.
You know, it shouldn't be from a camera. I don't want to fight against a camera in court. I'd rather have my chances with a person. I'd rather be the one that issued the ticket, and then I can explain what I saw, how I saw it. A camera only sees one angle. They don't see everything that's going on, so. Good point.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, this is our annual crash report, and thanks to the sheriff's office, they provide us with all their crash reports, and they've been doing this, well, since 2011, that I've been putting it into spreadsheets to try to show trends over time. So this is data, we added 2018 data to our database. So last year we had 97 accidents on public streets, which is just a couple of accident increase over last year. You can see as in 2015, we had as many as 127 accidents on public streets. The blue bar there is accidents on private streets, parking lots, and so forth. And that actually went up pretty significantly this past year. We did open some streets. I don't know if that has to do with the town center where we have, we had a few accidents over there, but where were they all occurring? Costco?
Costco, Target, Whole Foods.
Have there been any accidents between the liquor store and the sandwich place over there? Right.
As far as like in that parking lot?
Yeah.
No, I mean, the only ones we've had over by the liquor store were actually somebody backed into a utility box. We've had a couple of hit and run accidents, and the liquor store has great cameras, so nobody gets away from having an accident.
But not on the drive by Starbucks? We are not concerned.
That's what,
Nope,
right.
we have not had one in there yet.
Yeah, I worry about that one.
Yeah.
Because there's nowhere.
There's potential, but I think people are going so slow, and it seems like an odd shape, and I think people are just paying more attention in there. You know, whether it's everybody paying attention or half of them, we need half of them to pay attention to avoid the accidents. So.
I'm taking that quote. That's good.
If 1 out of 2 is paying attention really well, the accident doesn't happen. They can avoid it. Yeah, I think most of them in Target, Whole Foods, Costco, a couple in the Safeway parking lot. But yeah, nothing, town center, most of over there is all public streets, so it wouldn't be counted as private property.
Good, thanks. So here's the breakdown by injuries versus total accidents. So you can see by far most of the accidents occur on our property damage accidents. There was an uptick in injuries last year from 11 to 15, but it's been pretty steady since we've been tracking the injury data since 2013. There's a breakdown between intersections. Most of the accidents occur on public streets at intersections, and last year we had an uptick at intersections and a little downtick in non-intersections, and those are hitting parked vehicles, running off the road, those types of accidents.
Is the step down 2015 to 16 just a lot of the DDI coming on? That chart up there, there's a big,
Looks like it.
This one here?
no, graph 2.
Yep.
Or I'm sorry, graph 3.
I was
The blue bars, there's a big drop, 15 to 16.
Yes, probably because of the,
Is that just a huge driver of the overall town crashes?
right, this was during the construction period, those two years. Yeah.
4 shows it better.
All right.
Yeah, that's true.
So this is the accidents at the DDI, and I'm counting Marshall McCaslin because before they were so close that there's interactions between the interchange of Marshall McCaslin. So when we did have quite a few in 2013, that was before the construction started. Construction started around March of 14, was pretty well wrapped up by 2015. So we had those 3 high years. In 16, it had dropped to about 18 from about 36. So it was cut in half from the peak construction period. It's kind of upticked in 2017 and 18. It seems to have stabilized a little of it below where we were pre-construction.
Everyone was super cautious in 2016, and now they're sort of familiar with it.
Yep. And oops. So this is the breakdown between Marshall and McCaslin's blue bar, and the red bar is the US 36 and the ramps. So the DDI, the actual ramps came down a little bit last year.
How many people were coming off that? What's the traffic volume on the interchange? Approximately.
About 40,000. I did track, we did have counts taken by, Sam's Club over in,
So that's all right. I mean, so Alex.
it's about
you have
40,000.
So I was going to say 1 million, and it's surprisingly close. You have 1 million people a year going 70 miles an hour to effectively a stop, and not one got hurt in 2018. I mean, that's just phenomenal. It's just phenomenal. Like, I mean, it's such a goofy intersection when you look at it, but you go, we have 1 million people, 70 miles an hour to 0, and not one injury accident. I love that. It's great.
Yeah. In terms of traffic volumes, traffic counts were taken in April, I think, because Sam's Club in Louisville was doing the studies. They actually did the whole interchange, and I compared those with the traffic volumes back in 2011. Interesting, the PM peak hour went up about 15% from 2011 to 2018. The other peak hour, AM peak hour, only went up a couple percent. So you have more traffic, and yet, the accidents are down. Okay. We track by intersection. That's a 2017. Did I pull out the wrong?
Yeah, while you guys are pulling up that sheet, I think, that table is really, when it comes up, I think it's outstanding because it kind of tells you where the problem areas are. And before it gets up there, I'm really a little bit worried about McCaslin and Discovery, just because it's going up, and anybody coming off Discovery going west doesn't have a merge lane. So they're coming off Discovery, or out of Discovery, on McCaslin going downhill, and
there's no acceleration lane?
there's nothing.
Right.
Granted, everybody coming down McCaslin's supposed to be slowing down.
So many aren't until they actually
Until they
get to
have
the
to.
traffic circle.
And given that we are going to be pushing more traffic through Discovery, I'm a little concerned that won't get better.
It's a good, maybe we can, do a special study in the year, find out what's going on with those.
Yeah, because, there's a dedicated right turn lane to get into Discovery Park,
Right.
but coming out, there's no special way. But at the same time, with the punching of Discovery to downtown, they can come out on Main Street, so that is a new way.
But you're, in terms of needing acceleration lane, you're accelerating into a roundabout, so you're.
Yeah, I know, and I'm just curious with, it's only 3 accidents, and it only is still a lot to me,
The
but,
majority of McCaslin and Discovery accidents are all single vehicle accidents.
oh,
So some have been during snowstorms. We had a guy that,
okay.
actually we had 2 different cars that during construction drove off the pavement, and there's that dip and it
There is,
tore off the bottom of their car.
Okay.
So I'd say
Then maybe it's not. a
probably
problem.
all of them are single vehicle accidents. Either it's hitting a light pole that we cut down up there, and most of it's either been snow related or
Okay.
human error, but it's not multiple vehicle
Okay.
accidents, it's single car accidents.
That's refreshing.
Good.
Thank you.
So these are the intersections and ranked order by number of accidents over the 7-year period. And it's good to get a feel of these accidents over time, because sometimes, you have random accidents, but if you have a recurring problem, that's something we want to, look at and try to figure out what's going on. And so we've been tracking these, and we normally, keep an eye on the heaviest volume intersections and the ones with the most accidents. I think. And then this is a location map, kind of showing you where accidents are occurring. Again, the DDI and Marshall McCaslin are our two busiest intersections, and obviously we get a lot of accidents there. But Sanders, Sycamore, and actually the roundabout surprised me this year. We had 6 accidents. It was under construction with McCaslin. May have 1 there. We had 1. We caught a drunk driver, right, last year. But we didn't find him until he was on 93.
Yeah, actually, I kind of saw the same, the way you ranked everything is based on 10 years of data.
Right,
Since
and
that
now
was brand
we have
new,
like.
It actually is like the third in the rank order of problem intersections.
The one thing I would like to call out on this map is that Indiana and McCaslin intersection. I was surprised when I saw the data to see that it's only had 3 incidents over the last 7 years. I know that's been one that the community has talked about quite a bit. So I thought seeing this data was interesting. I mean, I know I've definitely sat at that stop sign and waited for an opportunity to go through, and I think the speeds do make the crashes that happen there a little bit more dangerous than they might be in a slower zone.
Mm-hmm.
But the number of crashes was fairly low compared to what I wasn't expecting to see.
Was it last year we had the bike accident?
Yeah.
So we had the.
That one though wasn't that at the top of McCaslin and 128, or was that at Indiana? It was Indiana, okay.
Yeah, the bicyclist was coming down the hill and the vehicle made a left-hand turn, hit the bicyclist.
Okay.
So then we track it for the 8-year period from 11 to 2018. So again, most of our signalized intersections and the roundabouts as well all have, 3 or 4 accidents a year, and that, accumulates over an 8-year period. This was an interesting one we put, before the, on this map, we showed accidents in the residential areas, kind of grouped them, didn't give you too good a feel of where they're actually occurring. So on this last graphic, we pull out the actual locations of all the accidents on residential streets, try to give you a feel of, here's one up here, and name that street.
What are the numbers? What is it, 2, 3, what are the numbers? Is that number of accidents?
Multiple in one place.
Multiple accidents at the same location. So this gives us a good feel when we do have traffic calming requests. We can pull this map out and kind of show what's occurred over the last 8 years. So that's what's going on, and I think you pulled out, where's my PowerPoint?
So just so you can get a comparison of other communities, I did a peer analysis of the data that we had on our server.
Took that slide out.
Can you take that out? All right, you're gonna get a visual. You have to write it down for me. So Superior had 144 crashes last year, and so I compared it to Windsor and Boulder. So Windsor had 306 crashes last year. So town of Windsor had twice as many crashes as you had. And then the city of Boulder, which we do their crash data program, city of Boulder had 2,900 crashes. So you had 144, Windsor had 306, Boulder had 2,900. So just as a gross comparison, I compared per capita, right? And so per capita Superior is 0.0073 crashes per person. So that's 0.0073 crashes per person. Windsor is 0.012. And Boulder is 0.027. So, and that's a gross, obviously you could think about employment versus population and traffic volume. But just looking at your data, you have a very low crash rate. First of all, you have total crashes are very low. And then your crash rate per capita is also very low. So we always say that we're working towards no crashes. That's the goal, right? And it's a big lofty goal, but that's what we want. And so you being at half the crashes of like the town of Windsor was really a good comparison. And then, just to put it in contrast of Boulder, you have far less than Boulder. The one that did stand out for me was the private lot crashes. And those are, first of all, not really ever tracked in the databases. So I actually had to go back to our databases and review if any of the crashes were private. Very few private crashes. And so the number of crashes that are occurring in the parking lots are good because they're low speed. They're low property damage most times. But it's pretty amazing that you have almost half as many crashes in the private parking lots as you have in the right-of-way in some instances. And I don't have a good solution or strategy for that, but that really stood out for me as being, that's the one place where you're very different from the peers. Now, whether the peers are not reporting it, you get an fender bender in a parking lot, a Whole Foods parking lot, and you don't report it to the Boulder PD, maybe that's going on. So maybe you just have really honest people here who are reporting them. I can't conclude that yet, but I have not found any community we have data for that has such large reporting in a private lot. So it's just something that kind of, we'll track that a little bit and keep a heads up on.
Actually, it's a great question, because then if you go back to the private, sort of crashes, if we could get that segmented, what's Superior Marketplace versus the Safeway parking lot would help maybe. I mean, obviously we know there's a lot of volume going in and out of the Superior Marketplace, but right now, I'm not sure, what we can or should do, because I don't know what the data is pointing to.
Yeah, we do this work, we look for occurrences, right? Look for patterns. And so, we could dig into the 58. It was 58 crashes last year, 38, 41 in prior years. If there's a pattern, if they're occurring in one particular place, it's not our job to intervene because it's not public right away, but we could make recommendations about design changes there, because those are customers, they're residents, they just happen to be on private land. But I don't know if there's a trend. The master here will let us know if there is a trend or not. I presume that there is, but I
can't say that there's a trend, but I know a lot of jurisdictions, if a private property damage accident is under $1,000, they don't take a report. We take a report on everything. And we just take more reports than most jurisdictions do, because we want to make sure that we take care of our citizens. So if they call and they want to file a report, or they claim there's an accident, we're going to take a report on it, document it. Because nowhere else is it going to be documented other than in our report. So I think that's a big part of it, is that other jurisdictions are not tracking it because they're not taking the reports on it like we are.
But you haven't changed your policy in the last 2 years, so the uptick, so the uptick is definitely.
Yeah, the uptick is definitely there.
Okay.
Is there a location like in one of the lots that you frequently see crashes occurring at a location like a driveway access point or somewhere? No,
it's all people backing into each other. Two people get into their cars and they back up at the same time.
Okay. So not a lot we can do about that, right?
No, that's
Okay.
goes back
Thanks,
to what
that
you said
explains it.
earlier.
Okay, if we can move on to South Coal Creek Drive and speed studies, traffic calming. Now, my memo, I gave you some background on, why Coal Creek is so wide. I mean, it's 56 feet wide, was designed as a 4-lane collector with a turn lane. It was planned to eventually go through the town center and hook up to Coal Creek Drive before Coal Creek was traffic calmed. So that was the grandiose plan. Why it's named Coal Creek Drive, to me right now, I've always wanted to rename it because it's kind of confusing. So it was posted at 35, and I think that was the original, posted as a major collector. We did restripe it in the early mid 2000s, so we striped it for 2 lanes and a center turn lane and on-street bike lanes, kind of wide bike lanes. So currently, there is no speed limit posted for the southbound directions, 35 for the northbound direction. This was a subject of our transportation plan update in 2014 about whether to extend Coal Creek Drive through the town center. We did, the intention here was to have it serve as a minor collector street with a bicycle pedestrian way along its entire length. And on the land north of Rock Creek Parkway, have it designed to discourage high-speed shortcut access through that part of the community. So we back then, we figured we wanted a connection, but through the town center, it would be a low-speed facility that was designed to make sure people went slower. But we still have the problem with the existing Coal Creek Drive. It's about a half a mile in length from Rock Creek Drive to its current end. It's wide, and we felt at some point we come back and do some traffic calming. So we took speed counts, and I apologize that I didn't get you the data breakdown, but I got it. Neil noticed it was missing, so but it was up. We had the traffic counters up for almost 10 days. The average speed south of Riverbend was almost 29 miles an hour. South of Akron was 26 miles an hour. The 85th percentile speed at both locations was 34 miles an hour. About 9% of the traffic was exceeding the speed limit. So we can change the speed limit, but unless we do something else, we're not going to change the speeds. We have looked at going through lanterns, and we decided we wanted to start necking it down, going into the town center. If that ever gets extended through, we would go from 56 feet wide. We'd put a little median as you at the end of the existing Coal Creek Drive, start necking it down, so there'd be a median here. There's a trail crossing. I'll go back to here. So this trail here. So at that point, we'd have a raised crossing. That would also slow traffic down, and then we'd have a 4-way stop. So we have 3 design controls that would, warrant a 25-mile-an-hour posting, and you can see
We need to do that. You're south of Lanterns there.
Yeah.
Who's paying, let's assume that that's a brilliant idea for the neck down and the raised crosswalk. Who pays for that?
this here. This is all part of Lanterns.
It's all part of the FGP.
So Lanterns starts, I mean, that's current road, so Lanterns will rip up the road and agree on the
I think that-
raised crosswalk?
It
right.
ends about here. That's
Right.
the existing terminus.
That's the existing terminus? I thought it went further up. Go back to the Google
Wait,
Maps.
are we looking at this backwards?
No, it's,
Here's the trail.
yeah, I mean, that thing just ends there. Right now, it's a rocky.
Okay, yeah, I guess I thought it
outcrop.
went, you're right. I just thought it went further. Okay. I get up there much.
Yeah. I used to walk it every day.
So that's the start of the traffic calming.
Yeah.
So then we get to Akron. So this is the plan that we had presented a couple months ago, last meeting and the meeting before, putting an island in the center and
Yep.
put a crosswalk along the north side and take away the southbound left turn lane. The issue we had a pretty short island here. We had a new crosswalk. It was difficult to make that longer because to scoot the ADA ramps, we had an inlet structure right here. So we didn't want to rebuild the inlet. So it was hard to get that any further to the north. We did get with the school district and see, well, can't we just have the stop? I think they were stopping here and here.
Yeah, they're stopping at the north of Akron.
Yeah, so we asked, can we stop on this side and be able to build new ramps where there were no constraints building the ramps? We also had a light pole here that was in the way. Can we do this with some islands and build new ADA ramps to make it more enhanced pedestrian crossing? So we had costs of this plan, which was about $75,000. So we wanted to bring those costs down. And so we haven't got costs on this, but we hopefully will get that down. So that's the status of that. And then in terms of the future, there is a new program from DRCOG that is coming out. I'm attending the the mandatory meeting before you submit applications tomorrow. One of the items that you could apply for would be road diets or traffic calming. So I'm thinking this could be a candidate for submitting an application for federal dollars to do the rest of the traffic calming. And I think if you go back, if you really want to make this, truly a traffic calming street, we could put a median all the way. That's pretty expensive. We could put, islands on either side of Riverbend. We have a trail crossing here that we could do a raised crossing or something for this trail crossing. They don't quite line up, but, we could do something here to make that a traffic calming feature. Is it Stoneham? Is that Stoneham? We could also do something at that point. So it's probably 4 or 5 locations, or we can, look at the, median the entire way. So I'm thinking about, going to DRCOG meeting, see what we need to do, and I'm putting together an application. I think we have to have a letter of intent submitted by June 14th. I'm not sure what that entails yet. That just, we're thinking about applying. We don't have to have so kind of short time frame. I haven't been able to discuss with the board because this just came out.
Yeah, and just so you guys are aware, I've traded some notes with Alex and Carlos throughout the last couple of days. You got some of them because, and just so these guys are aware, Louisville's been dropping these all over. And, and what I learned is they've just been getting aggressive about pedestrian safety. They don't have to go to the board. Traffic department's just got money to go. And they're getting them at $25,000 a pop. But they don't have the blinkies in the middle, okay? So, but they're also doing it under an existing contractor who's already doing major CDOT work, rather than bringing out somebody specifically to put these in, because we lose the economies of scale. I think at 70-ish thousand, I think you're gonna get a lot of people scratching their heads, and I don't want to put a dollar on safety, but if we can get these in a 20 to 30 range, and if we add in the ones that we want potentially at Sycamore, based on what happens with Rock Creek Circle, there might be 10 of these that we need. I'm just throwing that out there. At 600,000, that's insane, but at 250,000 for 10, I think it's a very different dynamic if we're helping to calm traffic at the same time as improving pedestrian safety.
The problem with the cost is that anytime I make a change in a roadway like this, I have to upgrade the ramps to ADA compliant ramps. So that means tearing out the ramp, putting truncated domes and a ramp. So that's why these costs are getting out of hand every time I touch the intersection.
Okay, some of these things are 20-year-old intersections.
Right.
So Alex, what decision are we making? I mean, I feel like it's an obvious better decision for lanterns, narrow the road into something that's not going to be 35 miles an hour, but it's going to be 25. So let's design the road so it's no more than 25 miles an hour. That's the no-brainer. And hopefully we can make that decision now but I suspect Lanterns already has that direction. I think we're going to get a little bit of, I directionally agree with Neil at 75,000 a pop to put a couple of them on South Coal Creek would be not appropriate, especially not knowing about if it's going to go through. I know what the 2014 traffic study says, but the jury's still out on that one. It's whether or not South Coal Creek is going to go through to downtown Superior. You're looking at me, you're making a face like you don't agree that jury's out on that.
We're also trying to do some traffic calming for the traffic that's there today.
I understand, but the volume on South Coal Creek, I think that the decision we made a couple months ago is that right decision, or appreciate that update, and we're not revisiting that decision. But it sounds like there's a couple other opportunity areas, like on that trail crossing on there. And I don't think if you're looking for us to make a decision around doing a raised crosswalk or some type of thing on for 75,000 by that trail crossing, I don't think we can make that decision.
No,
Okay.
I guess I'm asking, we've always, the staff always felt that we'd be doing traffic calming on Coal Creek Drive. It's too wide a street.
Right.
And we could pop in these things, which are fine. We could also have an outreach process and get the neighborhood to help us decide what the future of Coal Creek Drive is. And do we want to go more than just a pop here, a pop there, and redesign the whole street?
So it's just in how other communities are dealing with this, in order of priority is locations where you have identified where there's a school bus stop and children's crossing. That's where you spend the higher dollar infrastructure improvements. In this case, the $50,000 to $75,000 with the RRFBs, yes, you do that there. At the trail crossing, that might be a place where you just do flexible bollards and paint. So in Louisville, what you don't see is when you go into the neighborhoods, they actually painted some. I'll show you some pictures of this when Alex gets on the next topic. But we actually did painting, red paint with those flexible posts where we didn't have the concrete budget in the neighborhoods to go out for another 30, 40,000. So the options that Alex is identifying that would not be at this kind of maybe high priority intersection could probably be in the $15,000, $20,000 range, and wouldn't involve flat work, concrete work. And you could make those interventions vertically. But this one, particularly around the issue of we want to have a physical feature there so that people don't leapfrog in front of the bus, because that was the issue, right? That this one probably should be in concrete. And then if you think about the design, Alex, can you put that up? The bus is now going to be driving northbound, and it's going to dwell in advance of the Akron. So it's going to be going northbound. It's going to dwell right where Alex's mouse is right there.
Yeah.
And so people get off, children get off the bus, and then they're going to walk in front of the bus, and then they'll cross the crosswalk, right? So this is where you could argue that if you're building this improvement for pedestrian safety, the bus is still dwelling there with the stop sign out.
You don't need it.
Yeah, that's the traffic control. That would supersede the flashing crosswalk, correct? And so for that particular crossing, the bus dictates that you should stop. When the bus leaves after the children have crossed, then for the other 23 hours and 54 minutes of the day, the RRFB dictates that, the flashing crosswalk dictates that you stop, right? Reminds you, actually. So if you wanted to remove some cost from it and not do the RRFB, the original intent, right, was for the bus safety, for the bus. So you could get rid of that and save some cost. If you're thinking about it in terms of a neighborhood traffic calming strategy awareness, then you may want to keep that RRFB in there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in my head, it's not just about the kids going and coming on the bus. It's about all the kids that we want to walk to school in the 100-plus neighborhoods just on the Waldona plus Amherst and Riverbend. Well, Amherst and Waldona,
Yes.
I mean, it's 180 homes.
Yes.
And we all encourage our kids to walk to school, and this, and what we're seeing with the speed data on this street, this is kind of an unprotected crosswalk.
Yes.
Because you can cross Rock Creek with this traffic light or the pedestrian flashers, but
Yes.
85% of the cars are going 35 miles an hour right here.
So coupling those together would meet both strategies, one
Actually,
for the
that's
bus
not true.
and then for the other one, right? So that would be good. And then I think in north of this intersection or south of this intersection, we don't pick what maybe, sometimes they do it in like platinum, gold, and bronze, right? And they say platinum treatments are those ones that are actually at school crossings or they're at a bus stop. And then the bronze ones are ones where we have like that trail crossing just to the south of here, where maybe there's currently 25, 40 people a day doing it. That's still relevant, but it's not in that silver or platinum category yet. And I'll pull up the pictures just so we have them later so you can see the Louisville. What you can see was the Louisville bronze treatment because I only showed you the gold.
So just a big picture question. I mean, irrespective of what happens with Coal Creek to the north, whether it goes to downtown or not, the town, in 2014 identified the need to make some major steps in terms of traffic calming. I'm a little concerned about doing something too soon without having the full scope of what it is that we could or would do to the street. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, since September of last year when Waldona was closed, we've had parents asking for us to do something here. And I don't want to wait. But at the same time, you know, when it comes to the rest of the street, when it comes to, you know, what's a macro decision on Coal Creek, I kind of feel like that should get done soon. And it kind of is it's sort of an irrelevant, or rather what happens to Toll Brothers and the rest of the connectivity is kind of a,
But that's why, I appreciate the update around Akron and South Coal Creek, but I thought we already had a decision.
to your point, yeah.
Around going forward, and so,
No.
right, so we've got the decision. I don't think we revisit the Akron Coal Creek, but I think we continue to consider gold, silver, bronze type thinking for the rest of Coal Creek, and whether or not that traffic volume is gonna go up by, you know, if, with lanterns, it's gonna go up, I don't know, 20, 30%, or I don't have your data in front of me, but it goes up a bit. If it connects through, the 20-year traffic data says there's a lot more traffic.
Yep.
And if there's a lot more traffic, you know, then additional traffic, because of the increased volume, we should, you know, let's not tempt fate. Let's install more traffic calming measures. It just feels premature. And we're going to have a decision on this, on the punch through soon.
Yes.
Well, I think today we're moving forward with the Akron. I mean,
Yes,
you've already
okay, good,
decided
good,
that's
good.
going in. I guess the question was speed limit.
The speed limit.
Do you want
right.
to change that speed limit? You know, right now,
And this is where, you know, me,
I'd love to do it.
Me, medium mode, I mean, it's degrees of freedom and your bimodal distributions and stuff like that. I mean, I looked at the data, I crunched the 2 different Thursdays, you know, hot data, cold data. And, you know, I think a large part of, you know, the mean is 26 miles per hour. Yes, there are a good chunk of cars that are going, you know, up to 35. But I actually think, you know, a lot of folks recognize there's a lot of kids walking on that street. And the fact is, you know, we're connecting a 35-mile-an-hour street to a 25-mile-an-hour street, which kind of seems awkward. You know, obviously McCaslin next down that way as you approach the traffic circle. But, you know, if somebody's going 35 miles an hour, they'll be squealing on their brakes as they get to the pedestrian crossing into Lanterns Lane. And, you know, it just seems odd to sort of allow that to happen.
Well, it would be a good experiment to see if, I mean, Alex has been convinced that you can't change the speed limit. You can't change how fast people drive by the speed limit. So let's test that theory, and let's throw it at 30.
well, I could even, you know, right now, we're going to have this island here. We're taking away the left turn lanes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then going further to the north, we have another island and raised crossing. So you have a corridor here.
Yeah.
That I think you could justify posting the 25 southbound.
Yeah.
Where we posted northbound, whether we can go all the way down.
Yeah.
Or we can, you know, post it just south of Akron to warn of
What
this
are we
place.
suggesting, 25 or 30?
You know, in my head, I want everything low. I view Coal Creek Drive very similar to Indiana, which is 30. You know, there's no houses off of Coal Creek Drive. You got to turn off the buffer. With the exception of Lanterns Lane.
But Indiana south of Colton is 25, isn't it?
There's 25 and there's 30. It's 30 north and south of Colton.
So when is Indiana 30?
The
Col-
part in
North
front of
of-
Superior Elementary.
Yeah, north of Colton, it's 30.
Yeah.
South of Colton, it's 25.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So it's 30-mile posted here until you get to towards Peak. So it's 30 here, and I think it changes to 25 right here. So in that stretch, that's 30. And it's posted here at 30 until you get up to,
So 25 essentially only around the schools, except
Right.
for the actual school zone where
Right.
it's lower.
so it's 25 around the schools and 30 in the other, I think Indiana from the other direction. Yeah, I think this is posted at 30, right here.
Yeah, it's posted at 30.
Just a bit of data that I showed you at the first meeting as a reminder, pedestrian survival rates based on miles per hour. So pedestrians have a 40% survival rate if they're hit at 30 miles an hour. If they're hit at 10, or if they're hit at 20 miles per hour, their survival rate goes goes up quite a bit. So survival rates have about a 2-to-1 ratio. So when you're deciding between, and that curve, obviously, as the speeds go up, it's not a linear curve, right? And so,
It's exponential.
so if you're talking about why we're doing it, and you're thinking about you're trying to save people's lives, 5 miles an hour difference is going to save roughly 15 to 20% more people's lives if in the event that that crash occurs. They have a 20% higher rate of survival as a pedestrian.
But we're not convinced we could change how fast people are going by changing.
Fair enough.
We have to redesign the road.
But 85th percentile speed would change, right?
Right. So let's see if what is staff and what's your recommendation? If we want, so I think there's appetite to change it, 25 or 30.
Yeah, I would suggest that you start at 25 miles per hour and you get the data back and we see what the data suggests and we use that to understand the speed at which people are going to feel comfortable driving. And then who knows from there. But I really am advocating with a lot of communities that they follow the 25, like Boulder has a sign going into Boulder. If you don't see it posted, it's 25 miles an hour, right? And so I think that mindset gets everybody thinking. You heard the sheriff earlier, it's largely on the people who are driving to make the decision. And getting a uniform, if you're in a neighborhood street, it's 25 miles an hour, helps with enforcement, which we heard about earlier, and just general understanding of street safety.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I mean, in that context of those signs in Boulder, I've wondered if we could go on a sign diet by just posting that on the periphery and getting rid of the multiple speed limit signs we have around town.
Alex is kicking me.
Get rid of a lot of signs?
Get rid of a lot of signs, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, we'll present a recommendation to the town board, 25 miles an hour.
Is that after the board?
Yeah.
Why?
Can we do it?
Doesn't cost anything.
I'll find out what the procedure, whether, all right. So as far as the TSC, 25 miles an hour is fine, then I'll find out whether the board has to approve it or not.
And I guess part of that is, we just have to have some sort of outreach so folks recognize, because, at least half the people have been driving over 25 miles an hour. We'll just make sure that they're cognizant of the change.
Okay.
And obviously there's a whole context of this. If some people just don't care what the speed limit is anyways, they're just going to drive what the road can handle, and we'll find out.
Right.
But can we do a touch point, 6 months after the change so we can see what's happened to the data?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I think 76th and Sycamore are next. Okay, and we have some options, but why don't we had a neighborhood meeting 3 days after our last TSC meeting. Let's see. Here we go. Carlos, you want to?
Yes. Can you make it full screen?
Yep.
Great. So we did try to follow the 5-step process. And so we had a meeting with the neighborhood. We had inquiries from 4 or 5 different neighborhood residents who wanted to talk about traffic calming features at 76 and Sycamore. So a week and a half after the TSC meeting, we were back in here and we had a facilitated conversation. First of all, around the perceptions that everybody had about what was going on in this area related to speeding and safety. So we did a note card exercise where everybody writes their opinions and thoughts, and then everybody reads them off sequentially. And when you do that, it's kind of fun because the person who reads after second or third doesn't get to say the things that happened before. And so you end up with this kind of really great catalog of kind of reinforcement of things that everybody feels. So individual and group-wise, we got a lot of good feedback on that. It's in the notes. Everything that was said at that meeting is in the notes so you could see it. And then so we talked about the toolbox options with that group after we talked about the ideas, and we identified some projects in phasing that the neighborhood thought would be not only technically correct, but kind of from the comfort level would help improve the perception of safety at the intersection. So the first ones we're going to show you are the refuge islands. We just talked about those, so you're going to see a consistent theme of those again showing up. Some changes to the on-street bike lanes, and then a removal of the turn lane in order to get the pedestrian refuge in there. So very similar to the project we just looked at. And then we want to also look at some new signage that doesn't exist at the intersection. So there's some visibility signage that we think should be added there to make people aware that the crossing is going to exist, and then possibly painting the crosswalk. So all those were kind of largely what we thought would be phase one interventions. And then phase two would be more of okay, now that treatment's in, let's get people to slow down as they approach it. So the first one is let's fix the problem, try to counter some of the challenges at the intersection. And the second one was to work upstream of those. So that was some feedback signs on 76 as you approach this intersection, kind of as you're behind Costco in the loading dock, you're approaching this intersection. Hey, slow down, there's a crossing ahead. And then possibility of some speed humps there as well. So that, just like we were talking about as you're gonna approach the lanterns, before you get to that point where you need to slow down, we wanna have some situational awareness. So they were hoping that those were phase two ideas. So just in terms of the checklist, that's kind of like the process that we want to continue to template out with neighborhoods, where we go through a perceptions exercise, we get all of their concerns written up on note cards typed up, we work with them during the course of the meeting to identify some early interventions / some longer term ones, and then bring that back to you as a TSC for consideration. So based on that, we put together some concepts and we put together some designs that we think would be possible to build and implement. So I want to show you those as well.
I think I have them separately.
Can you zoom in on that?
So we can toggle back and forth.
Okay. Go to that plus. Yeah, there we go. So, okay, so just for orientation's sake, this map is pointing up. Can you scroll it down, push it down a little bit?
Before you go too far, Carlos or Alex, in the previous picture, I mean, remind me again here, but isn't 76 striped for just one lane?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because
Correct.
the drawing made it look like it's two north-south, because I was pretty sure we, at some point, had restriped a bike lane in there
Yeah,
already.
they took an old aerial and they.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Okay, let me go back. All right, so I'm going to try to do this. Give me just 1 second to zoom in so everyone can see it. There we go. Okay, so north is up in this map. And so the idea here is that we're adding the crossing features in the middle. So we're deleting the left-hand turn lane out. So if you're executing your left-hand turn, you're going from that lane. Likewise here, you're making the turn from this lane, and the turn lanes become median refuges. We're reconfiguring these crosswalks. Alex talked earlier about the need to make the ADA compliant crosswalks connect to the new treatment, right? And then so there's a median feature that exists with this design. There's new crosswalks at all legs of the intersections. There was, this is kind of an interesting crosswalk because it happens in the valley, near the valley pan today. So we did some extension of this nose median here. And then we're actually trying to get a small, actually we're pulling it back. The crosswalks in the valley pan today and the neighborhood was really helpful. When you're sitting here, it's hard to see that crosswalk because it lives in the valley pan. And so by moving the crosswalk back, we get better ADA compliance, and plus you get to see it when you're opposing. So you're driving this way, you can actually see the crosswalk. So we did some nose treatment on that. So that's one option. See if it'll behave here.
And just for my own, I didn't get a chance to Google it, but what's a thermoplastic crosswalk?
Yeah, a thermoplastic crosswalk is it's a piece of plastic that's applied to the ground with heat, so it endures a little more. Some say it's more visible.
Okay.
It's unlike we go out and spray the crosswalk. That's a painted crosswalk.
Yeah, paint lasts, about a year, whereas thermal lasts three to 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a higher end. So this would keep, you make the left-hand turn lane here, you go through lane here. So you basically still have 2 lanes going south, 2 lanes going north here with this design.
No, it's one lane.
Oh, sorry, I pulled out.
It's the wrong area.
Okay, wrong area. All right, so then here's another one here, right? And so this shows the bike lane in there. So in this condition, and the bulb out happens here. So this one has the bulb out condition here, right? So bulb outs happen here. So in this design, someone who's bicycling southbound pushes out as a result of the bulb out. And then in this design, we still have, as you can see, the median refuge features. So this design is a more expensive design because you're rebuilding a lot of curb work here to get that feature. And Alex, just to make sure I got this right, in this design, we weren't bulbing out.
No.
And so you would still get 2 lanes though, right? Because you'd still, no?
It's straight now. We have a wide bike lane.
Okay, so so you still only have 1 lane on the approach today. All right, so that's the clarification. Thank you. I got that now too. All right, so then in this design, it would be the same number of lanes. So the lanes don't change here. They're both going to represent 1 northbound, 1 southbound. But this is basically to reinforce more of a neck down feature at this intersection, right? And so this would be a significant rebuild of the intersection, but it would result in a narrower crossing distance, right? If I'm going to pull back just for a second, the crossing distance in this design, keep me honest here, okay? So the crossing distance in this design is this is the point of exposure. You're exposed, exposed, exposed. Now you're refuge, you're not exposed. And then you're exposed again. So your exposure distance is longer in this design, right? And then in this design here, you have less exposure. So you're standing here, you're still protected on the curb, and then you're exposed for a shorter distance here, then you're in the refuge, and then you're exposed again, and then you're not. So it's a shorter exposure time, right? On both sides for that matter, right? And then for this crossing, you're also exposed less because this one has a little bit of a bulb. It's not as dramatic as 76, but there is a little bit of a difference. So those were 2 ways to kind of approach that.
We did, on this one, the radius of the curb return here,
Yeah.
you notice how that's pretty tight, but we made this
Oh, yeah.
much wider because that's where the truck movements are. Going around, if any trucks are making right turns, they're probably not making right turns like this, but they may be, doing this going up to Target or Costco truck docks. Most of the trucks come in from 76th Street, but if any, we provided a little wider radius there for the trucks.
So then just to keep me honest and remind me too, the buses would be dwelling coming southbound. So the buses are going to dwell in this zone or in this zone. So just like we talked about. Right. So that's where it is today. The hope with these projects, we've trying to coordinate with BBSD, we'll continue to. The hope is that the buses are dwelling closer into this zone. And the idea with them dwelling in this zone is that anybody who's waiting here is less tempted to leapfrog the bus as a result of this vertical feature, right? So the idea would be the bus would actually dwell in this zone, put on the sign that says stop. Children would depart, they depart this way, they could go this way. If they're going this way and this way, the hope is also that that would stop that. What was brought up at our community meeting, which is a good point and reminder, was that if the buses are dwelling there or someone stopped there, the east-west traffic can still proceed, right? And so there was some concern about a child gets off the bus and say they were going to proceed southbound, right? That bus that's there, or even the RRFBs that we have here, don't stop this movement. They only stop one movement of the intersection, right? So the bus being here or the RFBs being activated here only control that movement. It's still going to be incumbent on the drivers to pay attention and be aware at this intersection that someone will be crossing at that location.
And the buses and I thought they used to drive down Sycamore, but maybe that's changed. Is it just they can't do the turnaround if they go into the neighborhood?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I mean, because we can get the kids off 76th and dropped off in the Sagamore neighborhood.
Instead of going into Sagamore, I'm not
Not
sure.
all the children can get on and off the bus there
Live there.
are from Sac.
Yeah.
Some of them come from the neighborhood over here.
You're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're trying to drop here as a kind of central,
To get
drop,
everybody.
pick up the central
Yeah.
there. So it's just worth mentioning, and it was a really good point by the neighbor that like, when you're dwelling here, people sometimes just keep going. So some of the things we've tried to do, why we're advocating for getting that crosswalk out of the pan and getting it more visibility, is that when you're dwelling here waiting and you see somebody, you're going to see them at a higher focal point, right? So that's a kind of you'd say, why are you cutting off that median and doing this? Well, we're trying to get more visibility. So the only way to, there's very few ways in the toolbox to actually have somebody who's got off the bus here and then wants to walk here. There's very few ways to control that through movement, right? Obviously a signal would do it. If you had a signal, you could turn it off, and they call it the scramble phase. They have these in downtown Denver still. where they don't publish it, but there's a signal phase where everything is held, so people still do diagonal crosswalks or lateral crosswalks. But there's really not a lot in our toolkit that allows that to occur, right? And so the only other thing that we could do here, which would get even more expensive, is we would have an RRFB here, and then you could have another one here, right? So you basically have RRFBs at all legs of the intersection, and they're only activated per leg movement, right? But you're talking about, 2 more RFBs, right? So that is what we've been working on in terms of response to the process. And if you go back to your new flow chart, can I have that for a second? So we clearly determined it was eligible. We had data from prior work. We went to step 4, which was a neighborhood charrette. We identified some tools, and we're bringing those back to you in kind of step 5 tonight. What we don't have yet are survey results, right? So what we're doing is kind of proving that with you and the cost. And then what we do next, if we're going to continue to follow this step, is bring this back out to community survey. And that would get to that point we spoke of before about that, okay, well, what happens with the survey results, right? But that if we want to follow the checklist, we're in step 5, looking for some feedback if we should proceed with a survey. Allie, did you want to mention anything?
So I think I just want to speak to this one as being superior than the other one, only because it's a huge, this doesn't really do it justice, but the amount of distance that you have to cross is really big for an adult. But there's also a huge park right here. And we have 20-something kids who want to go play. And so I think it's really important that we think about them crossing alone there too. And so making that distance shorter and doing those bulb outs, I think, is the way to go here. Is there anything else you wanted me to speak to with the?
Can you just maybe did I summarize the process that we went
Oh,
through
yeah,
at the meeting?
no,
Is
definitely.
that right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And Allie was instrumental in making all that happen. So if there are others who are looking for advice on how to make that happen, she was really great in pioneering and getting everyone here. What was really also, I think, really important about that process is there were a lot of children here. And it was something that I kind of made me think in the future for other ones, it would be good to have someone who could help with the children, because the parents are here and they're here to give input and they're here on their time. And you had a couple neighbors who volunteered to be like in the room with the children.
It's actually only my husband.
Oh, so, and he earned his fee that evening. So it reminded me that we want neighborhood input, we want families and children to participate in this, and that if we're going to have these in the evening, offering a room and a place for that to happen, and maybe he's available for others. But now,
13 kids under 6.
yeah, 13 kids was a lot. So
Under 6?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and they were really patient. And so, but it was great because we had a lot of parental input for that hour. That was remarkable. So it reminded me that when we do these with other neighborhoods, we need to be thinking about those mechanics. So that's the designs that we have. So the action kind of item we're looking for.
Well, if we talk about going out for a survey, you want the staff to define an area. I mean, obviously we have Sagamore, but we do have potentially Coal Creek Crossing. I think there's students coming from Coal Creek Crossing.
There are a couple of kids who come from north of where this map is too, from the little farm by the storage unit.
Right. But there's also businesses here that may be affected by the traffic we have. We don't know the volume of trucks turning and whether this is going to affect things. We want to make sure that the businesses are at least informed of what's going on. So
Alex, I mean, there's 2 options here. I mean, and the way I view it is it's sort of like Lego blocks. The first picture, you kind of put in the RFBs and you move the pan. The second picture, you do the bulb outs. It's almost like phase 1 and phase 2. Was that the intent? Or was the intent that it's an all or nothing?
could be based on budget, but the intent was, we wanted to cost these things out. How much more does one cost
Right.
than the other? We don't have those costs back. they all involve ADA ramps, so that's the biggest part in RFBs and islands. So the additional cost for the bulb outs is not that much, but it's going to be a significant cost at the intersection.
If you did one, you'd be rebuilding those ramps and you
Oh,
couldn't
you're right.
reuse them.
You're right, you'd
So
have to bring them out again.
Yeah, so you'd lose half of the project budget rebuilding those. So you kind of have to, and you can't build the median refuges without getting the ADA sorted, right? So you can't just put that in, right? So, so you have to kind of choose this one or the other one. And I shouldn't say choose. What you could direct us to do, right, is we could go back and get some cost information for these, and we could get some survey results, right? We could do the larger area and identify the kind of larger affected area, come back to you with the survey results of that, and then the cost for these. And I think one way to frame this with the community is to say, we're considering some traffic calming improvements at this intersection. Here are the two designs, and we could say that this one would cost, we could put order of magnitude, say this one would cost more than the other one. Which one do you prefer? And then that way you have some feedback data about the kind of relativity of cost to those when we come back, not just, yeah, I want it, right? I want to say, yeah, I want it, and I think it's the town should spend more on, as example, this one, 80% of the people said yes, and then we'd have a larger area so that you'd have some feedback data on it as well. Or maybe.
So my sense on it, these roads, just again, it's none of our fault, but the roads are not well designed. And if you want to change the traffic, you have to change the road. And I think the current science tells you that the bulb outs is going to improve, it's going to slow down traffic. I love the pedestrian islands. I like narrowing the amount of time somebody needs to be subject to the missile crossing. So I like the bulb outs, and that one I recognize is going to be more expensive. But, you know, I can't imagine it's going to be 4 times more expensive. It's going to be 30% more expensive?
20 to 25% more.
Because I think, yeah, you're right, because the ADA ramps, you're doing those in all the cases, and those seem to be, and the RFB, or our RFBs seem to be some of the big expensive items anyways.
If you package these as well, you know, you're talking about hiring a contractor to do curb work. You package a project like this with maybe a couple of the other ones, and then you start to get that economy of scale. The expensive part of the concrete work is not the forming, it's actually the truck coming out and delivering the concrete. And I mean, don't get me wrong, forming is expensive, but if once you get a truck out and it gets 2 full loads going and they can go to 2 loads on a project, there's economy of scale. So, but I think we need to cost these out also, just so that you have so you don't get sticker shock. And we get line item costs, so you can kind of see a little more about that. Other thoughts or comments?
Just, I mean, you mentioned that the business is nearby. I'm optimistic that there shouldn't be a lot of truck traffic. You know, Guardian Storage is up north, and, you know, the Target and Costco delivery trucks really should not be on 76th or Sycamore. It'll be interesting to find out if there is any pushback from.
And we seldom get feedback from those corporate offices, because all those decisions are made.
Yeah, elsewhere.
If the loading dock for Target, the trucks would have to make a very difficult right-hand turn to get into the loading dock. So when you're going north on 76 and you're a 40-foot truck,
You're probably back down.
you probably come in and you'd have to hammerhead. You go up and then back in,
Yeah.
right? And then if they come in from the north, they're maybe making a left in and hammerhead in the parking lot. So I'd be curious to. I would be surprised if a lot of trucks were making this right-hand turn
Yeah,
movement, and then there's no way they can make a right to get into the dock, right? So that may give us some feedback of maybe we could tighten that up a little bit, right? Because the 40 to 50-foot tractor trailer is the dimension that's making that happen there. It's not a fire truck, it's not a trash truck, it's actually that vehicle. So we could probably tighten that up. But that dimension is part of the feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I have one more question. Would you guys put signs inside the pedestrian refuges too? like yield signs or reflective?
Yeah, there actually is a special sign that goes in there because it has the flashing beacons that have
Oh,
gone.
right, okay.
Yeah, so there would be signs in the median right here. Yield to pedestrian. So if you're driving southbound, the sign's right here, so you can see it going that way. And then there would be another one, a sign here for people who are going north.
And for this one right here, where would those be?
We could put one up north for the people turning right.
So you're talking about this movement.
Yeah.
For that movement, there wouldn't be one because it's a stop sign controlled intersection. So there's no flashing crosswalk for that movement. There's no flashing crosswalk for that movement. So it's a standard stop sign with a stop bar.
So how are you saying that they would be alerted that the kids are crossing here after they get off the bus?
They wouldn't be. There's
Okay.
we don't have access to a device short of putting another flashing crosswalk here and here.
You already have stops.
The stop sign dictates the control.
Got it.
And so, and it's really hard. We can't put, some communities put the signs in the middle and say, hey, yield to pedestrian and crosswalk. But there's already stop signs there that govern that you should stop. You're only supposed to use those signs where there's no stops, if there isn't a stop sign. So that's why the only trick that we have in the playbook here is to move this crosswalk up to higher ground so that someone who's standing here can see somebody crossing here.
Yep, and I do think the thermoplastic crosswalk bars are necessary because we've had these painted several times and they just wash away
Yeah.
the paint.
Especially because they're in the pan here. That's the conveyance of water and snow and freeze thaw. So that's another reason. Okay, so we would like to define a study area, come up with a survey that is, I would like to be able to help with the survey because there are some ways to ask survey questions so that it's relevant to folks and it matters. And then we would bring those questions back. You can't ask a lot either because people get survey fatigue, right? So we want to get that out and get the results back for a pending TSC meeting. And then we'll also do some more cost estimation work on these so that when we come back to you, we'll have estimates / community feedback. And at that point, we're going to be in step 5 where you're going to say, okay, are we going to recommend this for town board review, not for approval, but for town board review. And then at that meeting, it would be on the agenda and the neighborhood would know, okay, this is the meeting that we need to come to and talk as part of public comment about the project, right? So that's how we would like to proceed.
Good.
As far as sending the survey out, what would be the mechanism for doing so?
Well, that's a great question. There's a couple ways that we can do it. We could do it electronically, right? And we could have, there's a company that you have a code and you can have your address or a code that allows you to take the address and take the survey because you're in the address zone. We could send it out through mail route. So you can buy mail routes that have certain addresses, and there's companies that offer that service now. That would be another way. So it hasn't been technical in the past, and it's kind of my job to help Alex try to make it more technical so it's in the bounds, right? Because we want to make sure it's people within the zone area are weighing in on it, right?
We have all the utility addresses, so define an area, we'll be able to get labels for that, all the residents within the area.
Yeah, so I do have a preference in how we do this.
Yeah.
I would love if we could send out an electronic survey where one of the questions is, what is your street address? And then I would like to see us allow others to weigh in that aren't in the area, but like we did with the recent Riverbend survey, be able to show.
Clarify.
These are the responses.
Zone 3.
The Zone 3 survey. Thank you, Neil. Sorry. Although it was titled the Riverbend survey.
And retitled since.
Oh, okay.
But I would like to, is there interest in, maybe we don't reach out to them, but maybe the Coal Creek Crossing residents do want to weigh in, and I would like to see their input included, even if we look at it
So
separately.
is that supplemental mailing? Because not everybody has email addresses, or how do we get?
Right. My preference would be if we send an email via the townwide listserv so that it reaches everyone. the assumption is that those affected would be the most likely respondents. And then I would also like a postal mailing to go out saying, please complete the survey.
So I have an idea that we've done in the past for that. So in the utility bill, you can direct mail everybody who's in the affected area, and they have a code. And say, take the survey, and your code is neighborhood 1. And then when they go to the survey, they say, they enter the code neighborhood 1. And then okay, these are people who were directly mailed that are in the neighborhood. And then you could post a link to the survey. And then when they take that survey, they don't have I don't have a code. And you click I don't have a code. And that allows us to distinguish between the two. Because believe it or not, if you ask a question up front and says, are you a neighborhood resident or not of this zone? You get people who are naughty. Either way. So by getting a code through the utility billing helps us do that. Now, some people share the code with others to inflate the results, and I can't stop everything, but that's just a nice way of. Also, there's some people who will get it. It's like property owners. So there's some rentals in the neighborhood. The property owner would get that because it's utility billing theoretically, hopefully, and so I think that would be the way to help build in some checks and balances into this, so we can review the results comprehensively.
I'd be really happy with that. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. We'll have all those details ready to present to you in the August meeting.
Great.
And I think maybe we can meet with your group just to run these options by and refine them a little more.
Yeah, let's just be a little careful. Let's just not over-engineer this thing.
Yeah, I agree.
We're not gonna, this isn't gonna be peer reviewed. We're not gonna publish in any, traffic and safety journal. This is an unsafe situation. Let's collect data, but we got to do this kind of quick. So let's just balance the art with the science here, please.
Fair enough. Yes. Got it.
All right. Let's get out of here. All right, let's wrap up here.
Sorry, I get you out of there. There you go.
So, other projects. So just some updates on Wildona. We're waiting on the bollards. Hopefully they're in this week and installed, and then we have to do some landscaping. On Castle Peak, we had the one upper temporary speed hump that's installed. The permanent one will be installed in mid-June. We're going to do some concrete work right where we're going to put that speed hump. There's concrete failure on both sides, so we thought let's replace some of that concrete and then put this permanent speed hump in there. So that'll be done mid to end of June. Pitkin, we're moving forward. We've already collected some data, and we'll collect some more for presentation to you in the fall. Current requests, McCaslin, Indiana. We've taken counts. We've done a preliminary traffic signal warrant analysis. We've kind of developed some concepts for a left turn acceleration lane, traffic signal, and a roundabout to see if roundabout would work. So we're in process in doing that. But I did want to talk about the Rock Creek Circle neighborhood meeting. I sent out some dates. Seems like Monday the 24th would work. I know, Laura, you're out of town. I think you're out of town. And it's not necessary for you to attend it. We'll take some notes. It's really to get input from the neighborhood, but we'll get that going, I think, on June 24th and get the notice out so we give some adequate notice to those people. But I did want to talk about the mid-block pedestrian crossing of Colton. And this is something that came up, Neil had suggested it earlier on in the year. We have an opportunity with the Colton Road reconstruction to implement that with that particular project. So as part of this meeting, I'd like to get input from Summit residents and other residents of the area about whether this makes sense. And there's a couple of, we've kind of looked at an opportunity where this is a Summit and this is Safeway. Mm-hmm. So how would you get, from the Summit to Safeway? Right now you either go to the traffic light or a traffic light. is there a place in between where we could put a mid-block crossing with a flashing beacon? So we took an area here, there's a sidewalk that comes down from the summit, and then you cross, and I showed this picture because you can cross here, and that's kind of the shortest path. And you're only crossing 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction instead of 3. The problem we have with that is that this is the area of the crossing. Here it's coming down. So you have some trees in the median. So we have some issues with sight distance, and we may have to remove some trees in the median. So I want to get feedback from the community about that, whether they feel this would be a good location, or we could go back to, the left turn where we go into the community park and put a crossing there. We have better sight distance at this point. So I want to get feedback from the neighborhood on this particular crossing. So I want to use this neighborhood meeting for both aspects, both traffic calming, and then get feedback on this. This is probably a project where we're not going to go out for a survey. It's on our arterial, and we have a short fuse because we have a project underway. So I'd like to get feedback from the neighborhood. Probably we'll have to see what the schedule is for when the construction is taking place. So we may have to implement this, sooner than later.
So one question about the proposed design right now, is there a reason that the crosswalk isn't set to line up with that sidewalk? Just to line up exactly with the sidewalk that comes down the hill from the
Go
summit?
back a page.
So it looks like it's offset?
Well, it was lining up. Here's the sidewalk here.
Mhm.
So we were going to use this sidewalk and line up with that. So this comes down. They have to get to this point here anyway. So they have to backtrack.
I think it's because there's 2 sidewalks to line up to. They picked the north one.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get that one to line
The
up.
picture's not the greatest, but I think to Laura's point, I think you just sort of split the distance between the 2, right? Because on the north side, it looks like you got about 10 feet to the left to where you join the sidewalk, and on the south side, you get about 10 feet to the south where you
Yes,
join the sidewalk.
exactly.
Yeah, this will be better, is what I'm looking at.
It's kind of in between the 2, so it makes sense.
That's what I'm trying to
Oh,
get.
I see, that's what you're trying to line up to.
The other issue about this one, there's no walk here.
Oh, no, I'm not concerned about that sidewalk. I just would like it to line up with the summit downhill sidewalk.
Right.
If possible.
So I'm trying to get to this point here.
Yeah, I think the point is your sidewalk is right here and it kind of goes down there. So because there's 20 feet between the 2 of them, and you guys are just splitting the distance between the 2.
Yeah, we can split the difference. Sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think it's a good idea to get feedback from the community on it.
Yep.
Okay. I think it's, okay, and final thing on our request, we've sent out the application to North Torrey's Peak, to Yarrow Circle, and to Riverbend, all asking for speed humps. So you may see these coming back in the process as we go forward.
Great.
And the final thing on the agenda was discussion of Rock Creek Parkway, continuing a discussion from the other night from the town board meeting.
So before we get into that, Alex, one thing on the current requests, for future agendas, can we list all the different streets and topics on here just to make sure that residents are aware of what?
Well, the reason why I didn't do that, because I didn't want to raise concerns out there that they could come down and testify, you know?
Okay, well, maybe not on that one, but even like what we just talked about with the Colton Drive sidewalk or things like
Right.
that. Just want to make sure everybody's aware of what
Okay.
we'll be discussing.
Because if I put Picken on there, they'll be,
Oh, I know. Yeah. So maybe not the ones where it's just, it doesn't have to say all the street names, but even here are the requests for speed, like
right.
upcoming requests.
Like
for speed
Yarrow,
bumps.
is that coming forward or not, so.
Yeah.
I think once it gets to that stage too, once somebody goes through the trouble of getting the however many signatures they get, it feels like, let's start putting that as an update so people know.
I don't mean that level. So if we go back to the presentation we were just looking at, we had, I think, 4 or 5 topics. So like, I would love to see listed out streets where NTC guidelines were sent, Rock Creek Circle neighborhood meeting, like just that high level. I just want to make sure residents understand what we're talking about versus current requests. Nobody knows that there's streets being talked about.
All right.
It's in our, they're watching this, people go watch this meeting right now.
My concern is this PowerPoint wasn't attached to the meeting.
I agree, this PowerPoint should be
So
in the meeting and should be.
if this isn't attached, I would like it to be in the agenda.
All right.
That's all.
Yeah, we struggle with how do you handle these without, like McCaslin, Indiana. I just want to let you know we're working on it.
Right.
But I don't want people down here testifying because we don't have anything to present to them. So how we do that, let me know if this is not an appropriate way of doing
Well,
it.
I think Laura's right, let's just load up everything, let's load all, what's on the agenda and what's emailed, and then if there's other projects that are listed in the deck should somehow be linked into
Yes.
the meeting materials. I think it's a reasonable request.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's fine with me if it's not called out in the agenda, as long as this deck is included. Okay, thank you. So I think finally the Rock Creek Parkway.
So I don't have anything to present. It's just, I guess, from the committee standpoint,
I'd like to see the speed data on Rock Creek Parkway.
would you like me to take count, speed counts along various segments along there so you have an idea?
That'd be
of what-
great.
And I can't, I'll have to be a different type of counters because I don't know if we can get 4 lanes, but I'll find out if our counters can do it because it has
It's
nice
perfect,
reports.
that road is so wide, you have to borrow them from PDOT. Perfect.
So first thing, we'll collect speed data at various points along there.
Yeah, and I'd say, obviously wait till school, we'll give you another data point, but let's just start it now because everyone uses Rock Creek. Whether the kids are in school or not, they're still using Rock Creek to get around. And we can always augment it with school time data.
Sure. Okay.
Because I think some current speed data would be, really helpful here.
When's the last data we have on Rock Creek Parkway?
We have traffic volume counts from 2015. I'll have to go back and see if, I don't think any of those were speed counts. They're just traffic volume counts. And then we took turning movement counts, which is used for traffic signal warrants at Pitkin, at Coal Creek, and at Coal Ridge. So we have those 3 in terms of looking at turning movements to compare, if you'd like to do that.
People cross Rock Creek everywhere. It's a free-for-all where people are crossing. I see people crossing all the time.
Mhm.
So, and I think the more we populate downtown, I think people are going to continue to cross, and nobody, going through, I know there's an underpass, but the location of that underpass is not optimal, so. And I know we can't afford a new underpass, so I'd like to see some speed data. I think we'd like to see some speed data, and I think that'll be a big project for next year around how do we think about some traffic calming initiatives on Rock Creek.
Okay. We'll develop some, at least from a budget standpoint, at least come up with some ideas of what we could do next year.
I think one idea is somebody, just make it I suspect there's going to be board level appetite for making this a 2-lane road. So we obviously can't cram it down for less than, $5+ million. So we're not going to narrow the road. But what if you restripe the road and made it look like South Coal Creek?
Dedicated bus lane.
Right. Yeah, dedicated bus lane, dedicated bike lane, who knows? Well, I don't think you need a dedicated bus lane.
You don't, but then it just becomes a lane that no one uses.
Right.
Like Arapahoe in Boulder.
Right. So we heard appetite, so I think direction from TSC, let's get data and start thinking about it as a 2020 project.
Carlos, I think I'd also love to hear your input on this. Don't want to blindside you with it right now, but
Yeah.
perhaps.
So 28 buses an hour use Arapahoe. Those 28 buses actually convey anywhere from 20 to 30 people in the bus. So you're talking about a person trip capacity of about
probably-
400 to 500 people moving
Probably
in those
1/10
lanes.
of 1% of that.
Right. So, I mean, although when you're on Arapahoe and you're like, oh, no one's in that lane,
Yeah.
they're actually moving 500 to 600 people an hour, depending on the segment. So just as and you don't have the service levels
No.
with the 228 that you have in the jump corridor. But just a point of clarification on the, that one takes a bad rap sometimes, but it is moving a lot of people in the PM peak hour. There's some happy Erie people that get to jump ahead of all that queue of traffic on the smart people who work downtown who live in Erie figured out a way to bypass the traffic. On Rock Creek Parkway, there's examples in Greenwood Village that we're about to work on that have higher volumes that are facing road diet projects. And I'll tell you that largely the science that we work with would suggest that this project like this is a no-brainer for a project that would reconfigure that road. The community education and conversation that you'll have as a board will probably be more important than the data itself. This is a major thoroughfare through this community. People are very connected to it. Some people probably make 7 to 10 trips a day on it. And the notion that you would change it will stir plenty of emotions. So what I can tell you is that the data will suggest it's a no-brainer, and the process and having a working group and having people that are not on town board understand the pros and cons of it that they convey at barbecues and other meetings will be determine whether a project can happen or not. And so we can collect we can collect the data, and I can give you the guidelines. And they would all tell you that you should go and reconfigure that road, right? But you will never do something in your whole political careers that will be as controversial as trying to make that change on that road. So those are my thoughts.
One other question about feasibility of doing that.
Yeah.
How possible is it to essentially put cones or bollards or something just very temporary up
Yeah.
for us to gauge reaction?
So I've done 2 of those projects in my career. I did Folsom and I did Broadway Lincoln down in Denver. And I will tell you that those projects only stir more emotions. They don't give you more accurate data. It becomes very temporal data. And they further the divide of people who think it's a good thing or bad thing. The temporary type treatments are not very maintainable. They're very ugly, and they cause a lot of emotions that I think are not the right way to do those type of projects. And so having a real community conversation around the issues and not just about whether you like it or not, but like, do we really want to make this change because we're trying to achieve objective X? And does everybody understand that and agree with it? Is more beneficial to spend 6 months doing that than to spend 6 months doing a demo project? Because you had a lot of demo data on Wildona, right? Mm-hmm. And that was a large community conversation about a small segment. This is the heart. I mean, if you look at where that roadway is positioned in the network of your community, this is your Folsom.
Yep.
And you really want to proceed with caution about how you think with that. I would still recommend that you have that conversation and do the project because your goal is public service and community safety. And if that roadway presents a challenge that's daunting, then it's worth taking it on. But it has to be organized and transparent because it'll be emotional for a lot of folks.
You said something there about temporary, which, I know we're over, but I want to just bend your ear. I mean, when it comes to speed bumps, should we be deploying temporary speed bumps? Or should we be thinking, that they're just going to create more consternation as part of the process than just, pouring concrete or asphalt in this case?
And that's a good question. I mean, in my opinion, it's a question of scale. You're talking about your major arterial that you're going to mess
Fair
with.
enough. Fair enough.
And what
Okay.
you're talking about with doing in neighborhoods is, hey, we're trying to figure this out.
Got it. Okay.
It's a third of, in some cases, it's like a fifth of the traffic volume.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a completely appropriate challenge and one that other communities are doing with less, with a high level of success. There's a lot of pilot projects in neighborhoods right now. There are very few pilot projects on arterial streets right now. It's kind of come out of vogue because we all took a beating for kind of being halfway done with projects, and then using the community felt like they were challenged as tools of kind of laboratory tools, and because we couldn't make strong political decisions or safety decisions. And so I'd encourage you, based on the advice of two of those projects, to spend more money on the process and outreach and community building with that conversation than trying to do a temporary one.
Okay.
And outside of the neighborhoods, absolutely. you
Makes
wanna
total
get
sense
those.
then. Yeah, thank you.
Very good. Anything else? Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.